Okay, in today's lesson, we're going to look at present perfect for measuring time versus output. So, what do you mean by this? If I look at a sentence in the present, so I write books, well, I can measure the verb, the action, or I can measure the object, the output. And so, to measure verbs, we know we need the present perfect. And to measure measuring a verb, we're always measuring time, always. So my question for that will be, well, how long have you written books? Now, we know, or hopefully we know, when we measure a verb, we can ask this question two ways. How long have you written books? And how long have you been writing books? Okay, so let's look at this briefly. Why can we ask this question two ways? Well, ideally, I can say, for example, I write fiction, which is a truth, it's something that's consistent, or I can say, I am writing a dystopian novel at the moment. So we know we can express something that is absolutely true and something that is kind of like a building block for your life. It's exactly what present simple does. Present simple are those aspects of your life that are adamantly true today. And they will be true tomorrow and the true the day after until you remove one and replace it with another through routine and through repetition. Present continuous, we know there's kind of two versions of this. Present continuous, we have, oh shit, why is that not fucking prepared? Present continuous, we have the absolute present, which, you would say right now, I am recording a class. This is the absolute present. But also we have this idea of, what we're working on. The present for different people is very different. My 9-year-old son, the present for him is like a skin that he wears. My son has no real abstract mind. So he lives in the present consistently. It's why children get bored so quickly, because everything is about now. They need to be consistently stimulated. They are reactive creatures. My son doesn't walk around thinking about what he's going to do tomorrow or what could happen next week. That aspect of his consciousness hasn't started yet. He gets that, or he starts getting that through puberty, but he doesn't really develop that in its full essence until his 20s, and then really in a profound essence until his mid-30s. But right now, at 9 years old, my son is reactive, which means he doesn't walk around thinking, well, I've got that homework to do tomorrow, so I really should do that homework. No, but if you ask him, do you have homework? He remembers, yes, I have homework to do tomorrow. I have to do that homework. So if you don't interact with a child, they'll never remember what they have to do. This is why you can never get angry at a child because they forgot to do their homework or they forgot to do this. It's just not how children's brains work. They are just reactive. So for my son, I am doing is absolutely now. What are you doing? I'm playing computer games. What are you doing? I'm sleeping. Stop using me in your stupid videos, Dad. For me, I'm 42. My abstract mind is just like this giant cavern where I walk around through veils of disappointment and worry and burden. But for me, now it depends. When I think about like writing a book, now for me is like 9 months. Generally the time it takes for me to write a novel is about 9 months. So when I'm writing a novel, you say, well, what are you doing now? Yeah, I'm writing a book. Listen, I'm not going to catch up for drinks until I finish this book. So call me again fucking in January, February next year. So 9 for me is that. Now for me is that. It's the time that I spend working on a project. And for each person, it's very different. Maybe now for you is 6 weeks. Maybe now for you is a week or a month. But, depending on your age as well, that experience, that subjective experience of time changes massively. And this is well why time goes so slowly for children. Because for us, we have this idea of now as this massive period that when we stop and we calculate what we've done, we're like, fuck, time just fucking disappeared. So on that, I can express the present continuous in this way, in these long-running projects that I'm doing. So, but when we look at a verb of action, we see it, we can describe it always in these two ways. So when I come back here and I say, I write books, it's something that's absolutely true. But if I wanted to as well, I could say, well, I'm writing books. I don't do that because there isn't this sensation that that will end. This is, something that is a pillar or a building block in my life, one of the most important blocks in my life. So ideally, when we look at present perfect, I should express it this way. Your question should always reflect the structure that it comes from. So I write books. The question should be, how long have you written books? It's a question that sucks. So if I were looking at the difference between why we do the two, I've written books. So if we look at this answer, I've written books for 12 years, published, we'll say. But either way, or I've been writing books for 12 years. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? To me, this one feels like a photograph. It feels like a fact. Whereas this one feels like a movie. Because it's the gerund here, it feels like it's in motion. So even though, grammatically speaking, we should mirror the structure. So our present perfect should be, I write books, I have written books. We don't do that. We prefer this one, always, because it feels like it's in motion. And so I think we did this in another video. I don't remember anymore. A lot of this will be repetition, I'm sure. But let's clear up one doubt. When we learn present perfect in a grammar book and English schools and grammar schools, we learn it in a pretty shitty way. So if this is me in the present, what we learn in a grammar book and in English schools is that the present perfect is some event that started in the past that continues to today. All right, cool. Okay, let me ask you this. Name for me 17 events or 17 things that you started in the past that continue to today. You can't. Nobody can remember the past. Exactly like children, we are reactive creatures. You don't have access to your memories, not at all. You can't remember anything from when you were 7, 8, 9, or 14 years old. The only way, in fact, you remember any of your memories is by meeting new people. When you meet new people and you learn new things, your brain does a concept called mirroring. When you tell me a story about that time you fell off your bicycle, my brain goes, oh shit, we did that too. I would never have access to that memory without meeting you. It's why it's so important as people to constantly meet new people. Because when we meet a new person, we meet ourselves. But why do I use that little analogy there? Well, because we can't remember what we started in our past. There's more than 17. There's 17,000 things I started in my past that continue today. That's not how grammar works. That's not how the brain works. And that's not how structure works. Present perfect is things that are true today in the present. That's it. For example, for me, I teach English. I write books. I raise 2 monsters alone. I exercise a lot. And I make YouTube videos. That's it. They're like my pillars. They're like the main things that I do. And so these things that are true today, for example, I live in Brazil. It's something that's true today. I know that. It's easy. I don't have to forget that. Well, what am I doing? I'm going back in time and I'm measuring it. It's not looking at things that we started in the past that continue today. No. We're looking at things that we are true today and we're measuring them backwards and past. That's what we're doing. So our arrow goes in different ways. Grammar books look at this entirely wrong. And so all we're doing is measuring those things that are true. So why would we do that? Well, let's say we say, okay, well, John teaches English and Kian teaches English. Okay, so in the present, we don't see anything that's kind of different between these two people. So John teaches English and Kian teaches English. All right, great. All right, so, well, what will give us an idea of definition, dimension for those people? Well, we ask, well, John, how long have you been teaching English? And John says, well, I've been teaching for 6 months. You go, oh, great. That's awesome. Where's my little fucking thing here? Nice. Cool. Good for you. And then Kian, well, how long have you been teaching? Well, I've been teaching for 15 years. And so the time, this commitment to time, it gives us an idea of dimension, of character. So I've been teaching for 15 years. Time is impressive, not just because obviously we learn things over time. When we see, for example, John and Jeff and Mary had been married for 35 years. It's impressive not because Jeff and Mary love each other. No, it's impressive because we know when we start something new, right at the beginning, it's like, it's passion. No matter what you do, a new career, a new love, a new hobby, a new project, right at the beginning, it's passion. And a lot of people say that the start of a relationship isn't love, it's just passion. Yeah, it's like saying that an 8-year-old child isn't a person because they're full of joy and energy. How the fuck do you think you become an adult? With passion. How do you think a relationship starts? With passion. How do you think you get a fucking rocket into outer space? With passion. You need that fire to have it exit the orbit of like the gravity, of Earth, and to put it into orbit. And that's like any relationship needs that fire, that fervent passion to get it up and out of its regular fucking position, out of the gravity of its loneliness or the gravity of its solitary existence. It has to be thrust into the black vacuous void of space. Like anything that will become a routine for us, we have to burn and inspire ourselves. And so the start of everything is wild, passionate, it's beautiful. And then eventually it falls into routine. And years of just routine until eventually, maybe 7 years down the line, you think, nah, fuck it. I'm going to do something else. And that could be with your whatever activity you're doing, your sport, your exercise. It could be the band you're in, or it could be your marriage. 7 years, you think, you know what? Fuck it. I want something different. Or at 7 years, you learn to talk. You learn to dig your hands back into the soil, to get to the roots of your relationship. And you find a way to fall in love again. You become passionate, inspired, engaged, renewed, and then routine. And inevitably, you come back to that same point. And you either divorce or you find a new way to inspire one another, to get involved, to communicate, to talk to each other, to discover each other, to go into the world and find yourself in that person or that career or that hobby or that passion, that thing again. And consistently, this will happen. So when we see John and Mary have been married for 35 years, it's not that their marriage is fucking amazing. It's that at this point here, they decided not to tap out. At this point here, they decided not to quit. At this point here, they found another way to communicate. And so that's why it's inspiring. Because we realize as humans, that's all of us. No matter what we do, eventually we distance ourselves from it. We become complacent. We get into a routine. We start phoning it in. This idea of not being present in a moment, in anything that we do. And then hopefully at this point where we're about to sever, we realize maybe how lucky we are, and then we start to find new ways to understand that thing that we do. We find new ways to become better at it, to challenge ourselves inside that environment. And when we challenge ourselves, we lose ourselves. And then we find ourselves inside that new thing again. And so that's why we're measuring that verb, whether it's, a relationship for John and Mary or whether it's Kian teaching English for 15 years. We know that through arduous struggle, through difficulty comes knowledge. You know, the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. But that's not just education, that's life in general. The wisdom, the skill comes through time. So we measure because it defines the character of that person. It is safe to say as well, we mentioned this in another video, there are only 3 characters that exist in all of storytelling. The doer of the action, the subject, is either a hero or a villain. That's it. As the doer of the action, they can either only do something good or something bad. They are Batman or the Joker, even though I fucking hate superheroes, but it's just an apt analogy. Or insert any superhero you love. They're, what's that guy's name? The wizard one. Hippity Hoppity. Harry Potter. They're Harry Potter, or they're the other bad guy in the Harry Potter series that I don't know. Or on the other side of that, the receiver of the action is the damsel in distress, Gotham City. It's the victim. That's it. As like in our modern culture, the victim, like the child, is either receiving congratulations or a consoling hug. That's it. It's either you did something fantastic, good for you, or the world is unjust and unfair. Come here, let me hold you in my arm and hug you. Don't worry, don't feel sad. We're all in this together. But as the subject, the doer of the action, the person who's doing this, they are either a hero or a villain. They either did something amazing or they fucked up. As a receiver of the action, well, they've been suffering for too long. So as a hero, we say, well, Kian has been teaching English for 15 years. Now, Kian is the hero. As the victim, Kian has been waiting for a table for 1 hour. And you can the only reason you're measuring a verb is to make yourself generally look like the hero or a victim. That's it. Either like when the baby takes its first steps and the baby falls on the ground, there's only 2 ways the baby can be validated. Congratulations, oh, or my poor baby, oh my God, don't worry, come to my breast. That's it. You're either looking to the world and saying, look what I've done, I'm fucking amazing. Or you're looking to the world saying, this is unfair. I deserve my table. I deserve my chance. I'm a victim in this world. The world and the universe is happening to me. That's it. That's as primitive as it gets. And to make it a little more sobering, everything you do in your life is about 2 things. It's about saying either, hey, Dad, look what I did, or hey, Dad, look what I did without you. It's a little unfortunate, but it's true. We're just driven by those 2 things. And even those are 2 things. You're either saying, building something to get the praise and approval of your father, or you're setting fire to everything to show him that you don't give a fuck. That's it. And so we measure a verb to make ourselves look fantastic, or we measure a verb to make ourselves look terrible. Even if the person is a criminal, let's say we have Jeff has been robbing banks for 6 months. Or we'll say Mary has been robbing banks for 16 years. Even when it's a criminal, who do we trust? We trust Mary. Why? She's been robbing banks for 16 years. What does that mean? Well, that means when Jeff goes into a bank, Jeff is nervous. He's scared. He doesn't have the experience. He's emotional when he's doing this. So when someone accidentally panics and twitches, Jeff turns around and shoots them in the face. Mary's been robbing banks for 16 years. She doesn't even put bullets in her gun. Mary knows that just the presence of the gun alone and the right words at the right time is enough to keep everyone in control. Mary knows that if she makes everybody feel safe, well, then nobody will reach for the phone to call the police. That, in fact, they will be indebted to her, and they will develop a kind of Stockholm syndrome, and they'll make that experience easier for her. So even if it's something terrible, we trust people with experience. It puts our minds at ease. We don't trust people who've been doing something for 6 months. And so that's essentially why we're doing this. But let's look back at really what we want to do here. In that activity, we're looking at time and output. What do we mean? Well, we're measuring time for the hero complex. So we're measuring it to show this kind of linear movement. So we'll say here 12 years, because we're going to measure I write books. So 12 years. I write books. How long have you written books? Or how long have you been writing books? We'll say I've been writing books for 12 years. Now we want to measure output. So if time is linear, well then output is vertical. So output, we're measuring the quantity of something. It's like a stack. And so instead of how long, for this one, our question is going to be, well, how many? And so what are we measuring here? We're measuring books. How many books have you written? Now here, because I'm measuring a quantity, it always has to be written. It can't be how many books have you been writing. No, it has to be how many books have you written. So that becomes how I measure my object. This is how I measure my verb. Together, we get an understanding of, once again, the dimension of a person, the hero complex. I've written 22 novels. So together, we could say, well, I've written 22 novels in 12 years. And there we get the dimension of the person. We get the output with the time. And we can have it as one sentence, or we could say, I've written 22 novels and I've been writing. So I've been writing for 12 years. We can do that with everything. I live in Brazil. And so we can measure the verb. So, how long have you been living in Brazil? So I've been living here for 15 years. So that's me now measuring my verb. So let's measure the object. And what can we measure in this object? So what is Brazil? Brazil is a country. Well, you could say, for example, well, how many countries have you lived in? So I've lived in 3 countries. You could say, well, how many cities have you lived in? And there we could talk maybe the world, or we could talk about Brazil. I can say, well, in Brazil, I've lived in 3 cities. Anything. So once again, we're kind of looking at the time, the commitment to a verb, the commitment to an action, and then the output of that action. We can look at something simple, even an intransitive verb. I run every day. All right, so intransitive verb, we don't even have an object in this case. That doesn't matter. We're measuring the verb. Well, how long have you been running every day? Yeah. So I've been running every day for, God damn it, is that 11 years? 12 years? What was that? It's like 2000 and something. We'll say like 11 years. Maybe 12 years. I don't know anymore. For 11 years, we'll say. All right, so, shit. Can't using bad fucking structure. Okay, so then how can we measure an object? What's the output of run? We know the verb is run, so I've been running. That's good. But we still want to measure some output. We could say, well, how many kilometers have you run? Fuck it. How many kilometers have you run? Fuck. We'll just say here, like, I've run thousands of kilometers. Scheiße. thousands of kilometers. You could say, for example, maybe how many marathons or how many races have you run? But we can always find a way to measure the output of this action, because every action has an output, right? I mean, we do some, this is karma, you know, it's energy in and energy out. You know, we do something and there was always a result of that thing, always. So the same thing with I teach English. So the question, you know, how long have you been teaching English? And so the answer is, well, I've been teaching English for 15 years. All right, so then what could be the question for our object? Our object is English. So what can we measure? What can be the output of that? Well, I can think of two things. We could say, where the fuck is the thing? Here, oh shit. We could say, it's always going to be how many, because we want to count, because that's impressive for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is impressive. Well, we could say, how many classes have you taught in that 15 years? So I've taught, tens of thousands of classes. Or, how many students have you taught? I've taught thousands of students. And once again, I could put, if I want, in 15 years. So, in this case, we're measuring our output. So when we come back in here, to measure that verb, generally, when it's a verb of action, like a process verb, then we're going to do I've been doing this. And then on the other side, our outcome, yeah, I've done this, I've done 50 of these, I've done 70 of these. We could look at, for example, I am, or we'll look at John is, Jesus Christ. All right, here we go. John is reading a book. This is what's happening right now, absolutely right now. So let's measure the action. You know, he's been reading it for an hour. All right, so that's our first part here. We're measuring the verb. Now we want to measure the output. So what can be the output with the book? Remember, related to this specific book here. So we'll say he's read 120 pages. And that's it. Now, with both of those pieces of information, we can understand what type of a reader Jeff is. Now me, I don't read books. I write books, but I've read maybe 3 or 4 books in my life. I'm terrible. I get distracted. I start reading a book and then I start having my own ideas. I'm like, fuck it. I'll just write my own book. I prefer the process of creating a world than taking a tour through a world. But for people who read books, right, this is something that's impressive to them. Like when my books that are on Scribd, I think it's Scribd, and like even on iTunes, you know, they write the amount of hours that it takes to read a book. You know, you can read this book in 3 hours. You can read this book in 11 hours. This book in 20. For me, it'll always be about fucking 4 years. But you know, for people who read books, the time it takes to read that book is an important thing for them. It's a measure of their skill for reading, I think, I gather. And so the amount of time reading and the output of that book is an impressive thing for folks who read books. So we can always, you know, with this present perfect, what are we doing? So we have, let's look at what we measure. Measure, kid. Jesus Christ. Yes, not you. Talking theoretically. All right, so what do we measure? We can measure a verb, and with a verb, we're looking at Jesus Christ. I forgot my fucking thing here. All right, let me find myself in a split second. All right, we measure a verb and an object. The object, we're looking at the output, and the verb, we're just looking at the commitment. And that's it. So if we look at verb to be, so verb to do. So remember, what's the difference between verb to be and verb to do? I say this in nearly every fucking video. So verb to be equals the result, and verb to do equals the process. I don't care what your fancy grammar names are for it, but verb to do is always a process. I teach English. The result of that is I am a teacher, or I am an English teacher, whatever the way. You can say or I ran 8 kilometers this morning. That's the process. What's the result of that? I am exhausted. That's the result. You know, verb to be is always the result of verb to do, but verb to do explains things. We looked at this in a past video as well. Let's pretend I haven't seen you in 10 years, which is like every time I go back to Australia. And so when we see someone, we're like, holy shit, you're like, wow, you've changed. Yeah, because you're experiencing 10 years now in the first moment. Like, god damn, everyone's fucking gotten older. And so that's the process. That's verb to do. Well, how do we express the result of that, verb to be? We say you are different. And which one's better? Well, if I tell you you are different, your first question is, well, how? And then I'll tell you you've changed. So the verb to do, it always explains more. And so we can, we can measure essentially both. So when we measure verb to do, we'll do, for example, I've been living in Brazil for 15 years. When we measure verb to be, we'll say, for example, I've been a father for 12 years. Collectively, 22 years. Emotionally, it's somewhere like 90. Existentially, it's a lifetime. So, with verb to be, anything that I am happy, I'm insane, I am 42, I am this, whatever it is, our verb structure will only be I've been. But for verb to do, I teach, I write, I run, I train, I practice, I drink. More often, we will use I've been drinking, I've been practicing, I've been living, I've been staying, I've been eating, I've been watching. We prefer this idea of motion when we describe this. And that's it. So just to review, which is me just remembering what was the point of this fucking video in the first place. Oh yeah, time versus output. So in anything that's true in the simple present. So if I, put my life in the present, let's look at my 4 pillars. I raise 2 kids alone. I write books. I teach English. And I exercise a lot. I train a lot. And then we'll put in there like I run every day. I lift weights 4 times a week. And I practice yoga once a week. And I meditate twice a day. So, Shaiza. Fix it. Fucking fix it. And every day, King. Jesus Christ, get that right. So, but these here are my 4 pillars. There's other things. For example, I live in, insert the city I live in. I live in Araraquara. I live in a giant house. I have 3 cats and 3 dogs. Blah, 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 blah. But these are what I call my 4 pillars. These are the only verbs that are truly important to me in my life. They're what hold my life up. When I write my diary entry, once a week, and I start kind of analyzing and looking at the aspects of my life, it's always these 4 that I kind of break down, I deconstruct, and I see how I'm doing them properly. Now, inside each of these pillars is 1,000 verbs. I teach English is, I teach online, I prepare a shitload of classes, I teach philosophy, I teach English, but at the same time, I record, YouTube videos. I do this fucking shit. Same thing with writing books. There's a great deal more than just sitting down at Word. You know, I research. I do courses through MIT. I do courses through EDX as a part of research for my books. I drink way too much coffee when I write. I tear out hair from my beard as I try to write myself out of problems that I wrote myself into. I have anxiety attacks midway through a book, and like this, each of these alone has thousands of verbs. This one here, holy shit, it's full of verbs, it's full of actions, and all of them noble and good. And we mentioned this before, like why I hate verb to be, because anyone can say I am a father, and you're supposed to give them congratulations. Oh, go fuck yourself. You know, I raised 2 kids alone. I hug my kids 50 times a day. I tell them I love them 50 different ways, 50 times a day. I wash their clothes. I make their beds. I hang out with my kids at every waking second. I listen to them. I learn their language, so I know how to change the vocabulary of my expectations to the way that they understand the world. I watch fail videos with my daughter. I watch anime with my daughter. I play Gears of War with my son. It's the amount of verbs is just retardedly excessive, but it's all tapped into I raised 2 kids alone. And the reason I don't like verb to be, I mentioned this before and I'll mention it in every single video, is verb to be, you just get to declare what you are. And the world goes, congratulations. I am a father. I am a warrior. I am a Christian. No, go fuck yourself. Don't hide behind a fucking badge and an idea. No, show me you're a fucking Christian, or show me you're an educated, or show me you're a warrior, or whatever the fuck you are in modern times. Show me you're these things. Show me you're a father. Don't tell me. I don't care about what you tell me. I want you to prove it. And so our verbs of action are always more interesting, always more interesting. And so these are my pillars. Now, with these, once again, I've been raising 2 monsters alone for 6 years. Once again, I can find a way to measure the output. You know, we've done this so many times. We've had these many great days, blah, 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 blah. I just don't want to make it look like I'm better than you. I write books. I've been writing books professionally for 12 years. I've written 22 novels. Teaching English. I've been teaching for 15 years. I've taught tens of thousands of classes and blah, 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 blah. I train a lot. So I've been running every day for 11 odd years. I've been lifting weights a lot for the same thing, about 10 odd years. I've been practicing yoga for a year and a half. What's the output of that? Well, I've fallen over and laughed about it about 779 times. There's always a way that we can describe the output of that action. The output could be something fantastic, or the output could be something funny, whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter. There's always an output, and we can measure that output. And that's it. That's all we're going to look at today. So let's just review. Time versus output, present perfect. Time, we'll say, is how long have you been doing that shit? Output, how many have you done? And then the result of that is either a hero or a victim. The hero gets congratulations, Scheiße, congratulations, or parabéns. The victim gets a hug or call them. That's it. It's like, and it's the only 2 reasons that we're measuring that. As the hero, look what I did. In spite of my suffering, look at my output. As the victim, this is an unjust and unfair world. I've suffered. I deserve my reward. I deserve my hug. And that's it. All right, so that's it for today's lesson. Just once again, refreshing on present perfect, time and output. Time, measuring verbs is always how long. Measuring objects, the output of that is how many. That's it. Any questions, put it in the fucking comment section. If you got any doubts or anything you'd like me to teach in a class, in my odd way of teaching shit, once again, put it in the comment section. You want to say mean things, put it in the comment section. It all helps the algorithm. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video, or I won't, because no one watches this shit.